Welcome everybody to our Tuesday live stream. I'm on today with Matthew Sercely from agoristaxadvice.com. Matthew, say hello.
Hello, everyone.
And I'm here with John Willis from Special Operations Equipment, sporting the really cool shirt that just came out Monday. Tell us about that.
It says "Made in the motherfucking USA" is what it actually says. It looks like Waffle House. Also similar to Fight Club.
Cool. I'm Nicole from the Living Free in Tennessee podcast, and we're here today to talk about whatever you bring up in the questions. So if you have a question or comment, put it like all caps so I see it. I'll start because I see you guys talking among yourselves as well. But let's just continue what we were talking about before. We were kind of talking about getting eyes on content creation. John was just telling me all about reaction videos. Let's start there.
Well, you see so many of them, just like Matthew was saying. He's got a friend that's a music artist and remade Richmond North of Richmond, and it just totally spikes, right? Because people, it's in their heads. It's catchy. We all know it at this point. So if I really wanted to get a ton of eyeballs and traction, I would do the worst possible job I could on that song and just put it out there so that people would talk shit about it. And then you'd get the people that are like, oh, this guy's terrible. And then the other people that'll fight and go, well, I didn't see you make it. At least they tried, you know? So that there's no such thing as bad publicity. All publicity, controversy sells. And just taking even just little clippets of people making videos about things, you play their content on the front end, and then you just kind of react and talk about it for a few minutes. We're about to do a few of them on Friday that we've already got slated out, and we'll see. I expect those will get huge traction because of the topics.
Yeah, he told me that, and I'm like, yep. I need to learn how to rip those videos. That's literally what's been in my way, and that's a toolbox fallacy. So I just got to sit down and do it. So that's my job. You just gave me like John always does. He just gave me a to-do item this week. So
super easy, and with a text message or a PM, we'll have all the info for you as to how to do that, and it's probably free.
Yeah. Yep.
I think it's great for just creating new content too. So like I do a weekly email to my list, and really like half of those ideas come from I watch what's hitting YouTube about taxation. And it's like, oh, people are talking about that. And sometimes it's like, oh, this person did it wrong. Let me correct it. But usually it's just like, hey, this is good information. If YouTube is promoting this information as useful, I assume my list will find it useful as well.
Yeah. What is your website where you put that through? How do we subscribe to that?
So if you go to agoristaxadvice.com/LFTN, that'll let you download a report on a bunch of business deductions and a couple personal deductions, and that'll also put you into my email list.
Cool. And what's your Instagram and everywhere? Where are you?
I suck at social media, so I'm just on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn at this point. I'm Agorist Tax Advice on Facebook and LinkedIn, and that was too long for Twitter for some reason, so I'm just Agorist Tax.
Cool.
On Twitter.
So he's taking your advice, John, and he has his actual name on his social networks.
That I actually get that from Spear Code. Do what you should always say what you do. You know, that's where that came from.
Yep. So that's it. So your newsletter, when you started that, it was, what was it, 6 months ago or so, or was it 3 months ago?
I started it actually like 10 months ago, but the email list service I was using sucked, and like 80% of everything was going to people's spam. So I switched that over like July 1st.
Okay, so July 1st is about when I first saw his email, even if I was on your other email list. I don't know. And it's a weekly just highlight of something tax related or finance related. And it's a simple thing, explained simply. And that's why I like it, because I can digest it as somebody who doesn't spend a lot of time reading email. I saw that and I instantly loved it. So good job on that. That's a really useful service.
Do you use Constant Contact or MailChimp, or who are you using?
I'm actually using a company now called Berserker Mail. They were founded by the guy who does LearnTastic, but they're a totally free speech platform. As long as it's legal in the United States, they don't care what you say. And it's funny, they actually limit what you can do in your email list to make it better. So for example, they will not let you send pictures, because if you send pictures, it's way more likely you end up in spam, because now everyone's checking to see, oh, is this pornographic or something? So on the one hand, it maybe limits how effective your email can be, but on the other hand, it makes sure you don't, screw it up yourself.
Got it.
And I really like they have what they call office hours. They do a Zoom meeting once a week on Wednesdays, and you can just show up to the Zoom meeting and they'll help you do stuff, or they'll do it for you. Like I was having trouble getting my Calendly connected to the email list, and they basically just said, okay, well, give us access to your computer screen share, and we'll do it here in the next 5 minutes for you. And just done correctly, and it works perfectly.
Awesome.
Yep. The reason I'm not using them is the picture thing, though.
Yeah.
It definitely is not for everyone. And yeah, pictures can get a lot more engagement, but especially like I kind of just going with it. Like, here's the information, here's the spoken word, nothing fancy. And also, like, I still have a day job and a business and a family. I don't want to spend a lot of time figuring out what photos to put in things or what like that. So now I don't even have to worry about that. It's just, give the information and go.
Well, there are people who've never heard of a Matthew Sercely from agorist.taxadvice.com. Tell us like a little bit about you and how you decided to start that project. Because when the day you launched that, I was like, that is brilliant.
So I am an attorney. I've been an attorney for over 14 years now. And I went to law school for all of the standard reasons. I wanted to save the world. I wanted to be a constitutional lawyer. Turns out there are no jobs in that. And when there are jobs, there's no pay in that. So I ended up doing personal injury as my first job as a lawyer. And I still do that. It's something that I believe in. I've actually been a plaintiff in an injury suit before I was a lawyer. But it was actually at Jack Spirko's event in 2020 where I first met Nicole. That basically it's like, okay, I've tried to do businesses before. 2020 really sucked for me because, I made a lot of money off car wrecks and people weren't driving in 2020. So my boss's company's revenue was way down, but then my personal revenue was way down. So it was like, I need something else. I need a backup plan. And I did the thing, and you guys were just talking about this with Bear on one of these recently, but it's like, find the thing you're good at, find the thing you enjoy doing, and find the thing people will pay for. And I was just like, well, I know a lot about taxes because I've had my own business before and I invest in real estate. So I learned a lot about taxes about that. And I'm pretty good at it, and I'm pretty good at explaining it to people, which is a different skill set. And I assume people will pay for it. I mean, there are accountants out there doing this. I know there are people who specialize in tax planning. So I'll do this. And so that was like November, December of 2020. And then it was all about knowing people and getting connections with people. So my first couple clients were just people who knew me. But then my very first client who didn't know me came from Jack's Discord. Jack Spirko's Discord. Someone who had never met me, never done anything with me, but it's like, okay, here's some Bitcoin. Let's see what you can do. And that was kind of when I knew it was something real. It's like, okay, this is not somebody paying me because they feel sorry for me or they like me. Like, this is somebody who has no idea who the hell I am. And they just gave me money and hundreds of dollars without ever having met me before.
What state are you in?
I'm in Texas, but I can do federal taxes for anybody. And I have clients all over. I've got a bunch of clients in Tennessee for a variety of reasons. I've got a bunch of clients in Texas. Of all things, I have a bunch of clients in California. I think that's because they make so much money. They pay so many taxes. They're more interested in it sometimes than some other people. But I've got clients all over. I obviously can't help you if you're out of the country, unless you're a U.S. citizen. I get about one of those contacts a month now. So someone in India, like, can you help with my taxes? Well, unless you owe U.S. taxes, no.
Sometimes it's important to know what lane you're in and just stay in that lane, right?
Yeah. And I get lots of questions from people about, and I'll talk about it with my clients. Like, do you have a will? Do you have a trust? Do you have life insurance? Things like that. That's not tax advice, but I think it's important for people to consider. And then a lot of times, oh, no, I don't. Will you do my will? Nope. That is not my skill set. You do not want me doing your will. Okay, go hire somebody else. Go do it with LegalZoom if you don't have one.
Don't do it with LegalZoom.
It's better than nothing.
I guess.
So, and again, depends on what you have going on. If you have no assets, you're married, you have 2 kids, and just you need to make sure they're going to be taken care of, LegalZoom's fine. You got a business, go hire an attorney, do it right. You have, $1 million in assets somewhere, hire an attorney, pay him $5,000, do it right.
I was saved from a LegalZoom conundrum by my father going to a lawyer last year and having them look at his trust from LegalZoom. And there were a couple things, because I'm the executor, where the lawyer looked over at me and said, "You're welcome," as they made simplifications, because it was like, you're going to have to report on every penny and where it is to be able to execute this, which is, as Matthew knows, not what I want to be spending my time on.
Correct, but again, it's not optimal. But if you didn't have that will, it'd be even more work for you to do everything just to get even permission to do all that. So again, it's always costs and benefits. What's it worth?
So we have a lot of fresh business owners that have had a going concern for a year, a couple of years, jumping in. If somebody was going to seek out your services and you could jump back to the very beginning, what information would you tell them? Like, at what threshold do they need to hire you? What would you like them to set up from the beginning? How would you like them to handle tracking that? Like, obviously you don't want a guy to put a bunch of boxes on a pallet and mail them to you, all the receipts. What would you like to, if you could go back to the beginning, what information would you give them?
So the first thing I would tell people is don't worry about your taxes until you have a successful business. Go out and make some damn money, and a decent amount. Like, I had somebody contact me the other day who he made $10,000 last year, and that's fantastic. There's a lot of people who never make $10,000 working for themselves. But it's like, okay, I can save you $1,000 and it's going to take probably 40 hours of your time. I bet you'll make more than $1,000 if you put that 40 hours into your business. I would say for most people, like, until you're making 40 or 50 grand, don't worry about the taxes. Like, it sucks to overpay them, but ultimately my goal is not to reduce taxes. Ultimately, my goal is people to have more money. And so if you make twice as much money and pay twice as much taxes, that's a lot better than making the same amount of money and paying 10% less in taxes. I would say the other thing, just understanding how important your business entity is. Like, there's a reason most people say, set up an LLC early on. And again, I wouldn't worry about doing that till you've already made money, unless there's some sort of a liability issue. If you're a handyman or doing construction, you probably want that and get insurance. But otherwise, again, go out, make money, start your business. You can figure it out later. But then 90% of the taxes you pay are determined by how you're taxed. And there's really 4 categories. There's sole proprietor, there's partnership, there's C Corp, and there's S Corp. And unless you have a day job, or unless you're making millions of dollars a year, an S Corp is going to be what's going to save you the most money in almost every situation. So getting that LLC, getting that S Corp set up and designated, and then then there are rules you have to follow. If you have a business and you have an LLC, you need a separate bank account. You can't use your personal bank account for the company bank account. That's not allowed. But really, it's just like, I think too many people, it's an excuse. It's like, oh, I need to get all my ducks in a row with the taxation and the entity and everything before I start the business. No, just go start the damn business. And fine, maybe you overpay your taxes because you don't do the right thing, but you got started, and that's more important.
And making money is harder than filing taxes, or than paying somebody to file tax for you, actually, if I'm honest about how I do that.
Is it?
I mean, that is a good point, but it's, there's always somebody you can pay to prepare your taxes. There's not always somebody you can pay to make you money.
Yeah, the other thing, I think just tracking is so important, but again, it depends on the business. Like, I have clients who have high-end services where they use Excel to keep track of everything, and that's plenty sufficient for their business. But if you're someone like John, who is selling, I'm going to say, thousands of things a month, if not tens of thousands, Like that's not going to work. You need some sort of a high-end tracking system. QuickBooks is the standard, but honestly, I don't know if QuickBooks even it would be enough for John. But it's like if you're doing hundreds or thousands of transactions, like you're never going to put those receipts in if you don't put them in right away. So one of my strong recommendations to my client is pick a day every month and do your accounting or your bookkeeping if you're not paying somebody else to do it. I've done it on the first Saturday of the month for the past 2 years. I sit down, I go through everything, I put it in my accounting system because I know if I wait 3 or 4 or 5 months, I'm not going to want to do it.
Do you ever want to do it?
Well, no, but it's useful to have. I mean, it's amazing how many people have businesses and like they don't even know where the money's going in their business because they're not keeping track of things. You know, they see, okay, I made $5,000 last month. Where's all the money? Like I have no money in my bank account. Where did it go? And that can be a really important thing to know. And also just like knowing, again, if you have a business where you do multiple things, keeping track of what's actually profitable and what isn't. Mm-hmm. You know, I have one client who had kind of 4 different business ventures going on, and we sat down with the bookkeeping and we realized he was losing about $1,000 a month on one of them. Well, either let's fix that or let's stop doing that. But he had no idea because he wasn't paying any attention. Like, he basically had everything in one set of books and he wasn't very good about doing that on a regular basis. And so by segregating everything separately, we were able to see, okay, this thing you're doing here, like it's not even breaking even. It's harming you. So we need to fix that.
How many of your clients come to you where they've actually already had contact from IRS?
Very few, and partly that's because that's not what I do. I don't like I wouldn't actually take a client on who's currently going through an IRS situation. I do much more planning. I do much more. What do you do now to A, avoid the IRS paying attention to you, and B, so when you file your taxes next year, you owe less money. Now, if one of my clients, God forbid, did get that letter from the IRS, I would of course help them out. But like even then, I'm not. A man's got to know his limitations. I'm not the guy to go fight an audit with the IRS. Like I would recommend you hire somebody, and then I will help them kind of behind the scenes. So yeah, and it's another thing. Like I do have a number of people come to me and say, "Hey, I haven't filed taxes in 3 years." Like for the most part, I say, "Well, go do that. Like you already have a target on your back. Let's get rid of that target, and then let's plan for the future."
Yeah, I think, is that your background noise we're getting?
Is it someone banging something?
Yes.
That's my kid. I'll take care of that. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, that's fine. It sounded like somebody playing with a plastic toy there. Yeah, I think so when you go out and you're the kind of person who's like, I'm going to start this thing and I'm creative, it is really hard to make yourself sit down and do the finances. And I'm so guilty of this that talking to Matthew always resonates with me because I have a series of different spreadsheets that analyze projects, but it took me years to find one bookkeeping system that I like because QuickBooks has not worked for me at all. And now that system is almost up to date finally. So it's pain whenever you talk about that. I'm like, yes, I'm literally that person who doesn't have the books up to date. And I finally realized I just have to outsource it. And then I have to review it. Because if you outsource and don't review, then you don't know if it's correct or things can be hidden. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah, I think, and at some point, every business should have somebody else do their books for them, whether it's an outside person or whether you're big enough to hire someone to do it internally. Like that's not something the person running the company should be doing once you're really successful. Actually, starting the 1st of February, I am not doing my own books anymore. I brought in a contractor to help me do the books for a lot of my clients, to help me do tax returns for my clients. And frankly, they're going to do my books too, because it's so much more efficient for me to pay them to do it and then go make money than it is for me to do it myself at this point. Plus, I hate doing it. So,
That's much more important. But it's important. Like it's one of those do what I say, don't what I do what I do things where it is. If I could change one thing out of the last 3 years, it would have been figuring out the bookkeeping solution about a year and a half sooner than I did. And it was never about it's too much money to pay somebody. It was that I needed to put purposeful time towards finding somebody. That was it. So, yeah. What do you think about not paying taxes?
I think I don't like going to federal prison.
How long with a business starting off, how long do you think they could go without paying taxes until somebody approaches them? What does that threshold look like? Do you know?
As an attorney, I have to say that's a terrible idea. But if you were to do it, like it depends. And it's harder now. So really, the question is, how long can you avoid without getting like 1099 by somebody? And at this point, like that's hard because even like PayPal and credit card processors, etc., and like Stripe are going to start 1099 you. And when they send a 1099 in to the IRS and the IRS doesn't see a return from you, they're going to notice that. So I would say, whereas certainly 10, 15 years ago, it was easy to go 4 or 5 years with no one noticing. I'd really be shocked if you made it 3 years before you're getting very nasty letters.
So is the threshold $600 that everybody was up in arms with, like the PayPal thing? Like we've been 1099 from PayPal for 20 years almost, I think. The threshold used to be 10 grand. It was 20 and then it was 10 and then it was 5. So everybody in the last year or two was completely up in arms over this $600 threshold. But really most people that were running businesses on PayPal, they already had that happening. It was already going on.
Yeah, the difference is it now also applies to Stripe. So Stripe used to only have to 1099 you, I think, at $50,000, and now it's $600.
Got it.
And so again, for a lot of smaller businesses, you were very much under that. Now, that law was supposed to go into effect in 2022. It got delayed. It didn't go into effect in 2023. Last I heard, it's been delayed in 2024 as well, though we won't really know that until 2025 when those forms are due. But I mean, if you take credit cards, which it's pretty hard to have a business these days without taking credit cards. But if you take credit cards, I don't think you're going to make it 2 or 3 years before somebody in the federal government figures it out.
And is that where you want to put your time? Avoiding paying taxes that you're supposed to pay and then fighting off the audit? You know, whenever this hullabaloo about the $600 threshold for the 1099 comes up, I'm like, I'm reporting that income anyway. So to me, it's just another thing that comes in the mail that like we can verify if we agree. That's about all we can do. But it's not any different than what I was going to be putting in on my tax return anyway.
And it's really anytime you move money anywhere. It's not just PayPal. It's Cash App, Venmo, any of those things where a guy didn't have to go get a business license and a DBA and a bank account to receive money. They could just move it through these apps and then spend money off of these apps as though it was a debit card also. But anything on any of these apps, they're recording it all now. So if you're hearing this and you're not aware of this, you are now on the radar, just in case you don't know.
Prepared citizens doing taxes today. Perfect time to tune in.
Yeah, actually, I think it was yesterday that the IRS actually officially opened up to accept tax returns. So a couple were accepted before them, but it's funny. I'm on Facebook groups about taxes, and all these people were, asking, well, why am I going to owe taxes? Here are my numbers. And kind of the common thing is, well, here's a website where you can put in those numbers, and it will tell you as well or better than I can your estimated taxes. Like, let me Google that for you almost.
Even Credit Karma's got it on there.
Yeah. Again, but yeah, I definitely agree with Nicole. Like at some point you can try to hide how much money you're making, but how much effort are you putting into that? How much money are you not making because you're doing that? Or even how much are you self-sabotaging? Because again, like there were ways before this to avoid it by just not making enough money, but wouldn't you be better off making a lot more money and then paying your taxes? I mean, I'm as anarchist as anybody comes. I hate the government. Taxation is theft, but they have power to throw you in prison if you don't pay it. So I'm going to pay my taxes. I'm just going to pay as little as possible to avoid getting in trouble. But again, ultimately, if you're going to do something that makes you more money and your taxes go up, but you still make more money, that's a good thing to do for you.
Along those same lines, you said also anybody that takes credit cards. For years, we were cash or check, and it was very difficult to take credit cards in the past. You actually had to have a credit check. They'd give you a machine. You would have to swipe in place. If you digitally punched, there was always some nonsense when you had to call and have a conversation with somebody. With that said, the month we started taking credit cards, my business 10x'd. Like literally that month, because of people being able to just call in with a credit card or walk in with a credit card, we 10x'd our revenue that 30 days just because of the ease of people giving us money, where they used to have to go and get cash, mail cash, or send a check. And then there was always an issue with checks because we were just kids. We were fresh in business, and we had bank accounts with Wells Fargo and B of A, and you would have these checks come in from other places, and we didn't have a balance in there to cover a lot of those checks. So they would sit on some of those checks for weeks before we could get our funds.
Yeah. And I mean, some of that happens with credit cards too. I mean, I know, my processor, when you make $1,000, they don't care. When you get $10,000, they may hold on to that money for a week or two just to make sure it's not fraud or not a return or something, so they get paid back.
Yep.
Although it is funny. So I finally formally set up an LLC for myself this year because I didn't need one for tax reasons, and it doesn't give me any asset protection. And man, my payment processor stopped accepting payments on me like 7 times in 2 weeks because they wanted additional information about me. And it was like things like, oh, proof, you have a new bank account. We'll send us a statement for that. It's like, I can't. I opened up this bank account 4 days ago when I set up my LLC. Like I had to go to the bank and get a letter from them basically saying he is a customer here. There just aren't any statements.
One time I went to set up an account at a bank, which I ended up not using. And their process for getting an account involved documentation of the board meeting where we specifically decided on that bank and voted on it. By we, I mean, guess who the officers are? I'm like, excuse me, let me go to the car and have that meeting. Like, it was crazy. It's funny what different people require.
Yeah. I had never heard about that. And then I had a client who was setting up their bank account for their new LLC, and they had a similar thing. I was like, what? That makes no sense at all. Like, I guess you could maybe as a bank get in trouble if an unauthorized person opened up an account. I mean, that is how a lot of embezzlement happens, is somebody opens up a new bank account for an existing company and steals the checks. But it's like I can go online and show that I'm the owner of this company. Here's my driver's license. It's me. I'm not stealing from myself.
I should have just said, let's call this board meeting to order, like right in front of them, and like had it and written it down and been like, here you go. But I didn't want to be at that bank after that because I just thought it was too invasive.
Well, if they're going to make you jump through those hoops, what other hoops they're going to be? Are they going to next year make you do another board meeting to stay there? And I am a big believer in make business as easy as it can be and still be successful. Like if something's not working, fix it. If you can, and if you can't, just do your best. But
more and more, there's companies that just don't want to do business with you if they even think you're related to firearms or even think anything skirting those industries, or if you have conversations on the internet that they don't agree with, or you didn't do the thing that they want you to do, or you just voted for the other side even. And there is a split happening, and there are a lot of companies that are saying, hey, we do want your business. Public Square is a good example. There are banks and card merchants processings on that platform that are like, hey, these companies shutting you down, B of A, Wells Fargo, for instance, PayPal having issues, giving their customers grief. You have other options. You just have to know who those other options are. And a lot of them are on Public Square. We recently set up with another merchant account just in case. And they handle big money for a lot of these online guys that do online courses and stuff. So Well, I just tell guys all the time, especially when they're starting out in business, you might not have to have 3 accounts right now, but you need to have this conversation, like set up Stripe, set up Square, set up PayPal, whatever you're going to use for merchant processing, because you never know when you're going to wake up in the morning and your merchant account has been shut down. Whereas if you're already in the system, it doesn't take 5 days to boot up. You can literally, in the back end of your shopping cart, toggle that and you're back in business. So have those set up now before you need them. They don't cost you anything to set them up.
Not unless you use them, and then it's a percentage by what you sell. So
Yep.
that's
Well, and again, going back, that's why I have my current email list provider. I didn't want to go with Aweber because I remember when they just got, fired a lot of their customers. What was that, 5 or 6 years ago? It's like, I'm not that controversial in my business, but I am controversial in other areas of my life, and I don't want to take the risk, and I don't want to give my money to people who are going to do that. So, I mean, I'm paying more. Like, Berserker Mail is not cheap. It's certainly not the cheapest one out there. For a big list, it actually can be. But for my list, there are people who charge me half as much. I don't care. I'm working with them because of their stated political neutrality, essentially.
We're pushing 120,000 emails 3 days a week, and we're 15,000 texts every day of the week. And we have MailChimp and Constant Contact, and we have glitches with some of them, but we don't have any freedom of speech stuff. We haven't seen any of that happen yet. And I know guys are crazy with PayPal, but I mean, we were literally running millions of dollars through PayPal every year, and we never had any issues with firearms industry or any of the thing that. And I mean, I know guys that it did happen to, but we didn't ever have any of that.
Yeah, I've had some clients that got shut down by MailChimp, and which is ironic because I'm on MailChimp right now and I'm actively looking to get off of it because of that. And Constant Contact, on the other hand, one time one client got shut down, one phone call, and they were back up 5 minutes later. And they were like, oh no, that shouldn't have happened. And just taking that responsibility made a big difference. So not that Constant Contact is not also privy to the pressures of cancel culture.
I see Food Forest Farms said try being in the cannabis industry. I think I have a guy that will, a company, it's a huge company actually. I think I know somebody that will deal with you. If you reach out to us, I'll at least give you the name of that company.
Yeah, that's hard because most banks don't want to do business with you at all either because of some federal law.
Yeah, we got a buddy was growing just hemp and CBD, and made a huge amount of money within like the first month, and the bank canceled him. And like, we know the president of the bank, and they said, hey, it's not us. We were told we have to cancel all these accounts.
Damn lawyers.
It's always the lawyer's fault, isn't it? Especially the personal injury ones.
We always do what we're going to do and then tell our lawyers that we did it. It's hit it, quit it, on to the next thing. There might be a fine on the back end of it, but it's already done and over with.
That's actually something I talk about a lot. Is like, you should never ever lie to your lawyers, but you don't have to tell them everything.
That's right. We want to shoot this. We want to shoot an arrow towards this guy, and they're immediately going to shut it down. Whereas if we just did it, well, it's already done. It didn't hit him.
Now what? Yeah. Okay, Matthew, because I know you work with a lot of Tennessee people, I found out that Tennessee, if your business grosses less than $100,000, they're now saying you may not have to file a tax return. That's like a new thing this year. And that makes you want to have like multiple $99,000 businesses.
There are reasons to do that. I've got one client. Before he hired me, he basically had like 6 different businesses. And after we worked together, we put it into 2 separate businesses, one of which is like construction. So there's insurance issues, there's liability issues. So that's one thing. And then everything else is in the separate LLC. And I mean, it's amazing how many little things you can do, especially with multiple businesses, that you can't do with one, because you can tax them differently. So maybe, your business can't normally expense this or that, but this other one can. So you can run a lot of things through that. I mean, as much as I hate taxes, I love puzzles. I love solving problems. And figuring out a tax plan for somebody is basically the most complicated puzzle in the world. And I really do love doing it. Like it's fun for me. It's more fun because it means I get to screw with the IRS. But like it's a puzzle. And I really do love puzzles. You were talking about doing millions in PayPal, John. It kind of reminded me of Eric July. I don't know if you know who he is. He's a musician who put out his own independent comic book. And he did it through crowdfunding and pulled in something like $4 million for the first issue of his comic book. Incredibly successful. Well, PayPal basically said this amount of money coming in this fastly, it looks fraudulent. We're going to hold on to this money for 180 days.
Yep.
And he's like, per the terms of the agreement for the crowdfunding, I'm supposed to like get stuff out to people in the next 120 days. I need that money to produce the things to give to them, or it will be fraudulent. Like you not giving this money is going to make it fraudulent. And he figured it out, but I know he did a second crowdfunding for the next issue. And like he used PayPal, but his default was somebody else. And part of that was also just new. Like I'm sure if he had been in business for 5 years and then had that happen, it wouldn't have been suspicious versus like you're a brand new company with no revenue. And like literally overnight, you have like $4 million come in. I can see how people would be concerned about that. But then on the other hand, like any human being would say, okay, you just did a crowdfunding thing. Like this appears to be legitimate. Here, have the money versus, again, he couldn't do anything. I think he actually eventually sued them before he finally got somebody to solve the problem.
I did a daily export of money from PayPal when I did my last Kickstarter for that reason, and they did hold funds for 2 weeks during that. But I was just like, I'm just getting it out once a day because then there's less in there. I'm not just going to let it sit there, and it just sat in my bank account instead.
Yeah, he did one of the ones where it all funded at once.
Instead of Kickstarter will do that. I did my own website for that. So yeah, that didn't work for him too well. I mean, very successful, but
these are great problems to have. I know how frustrating it is when you're going through them and you eventually figure them out. But if you're planning to be in business for any length of time and you're having this happen to you, just keep in mind, these are the stories that you're going to tell in the future. If you look at Alex Hormozy, he had the exact same things happen to the tune of $1 million when they started releasing his program for the gyms and how to be a successful gym owner and funneling. And I think he said that they actually never got that first $100,000 when they shut down his processing. He never even saw that money again, but he tells the story today and people relate to that who are, within the first couple years of business. We do a lot of things within my business and even day-to-day life where guys are like, why are we doing this? And I said, we're literally doing this because this is the way I want the story told in 5 years. When we're telling people, this is how I want this story told. And in the beginning, you don't have any say in how that story gets written. But these little frustrations, that's a great problem to have, that you're making so much money that they want to shut you down because they think there's fraud. That's a good position to be in. And if you get anything from the very beginning of anything that I've ever said, and I heard this in many, when I was starting out in business and went to a bunch of business classes and stuff, three lines of supply for everything, 3 lines for merchant processing, 3 banks with separate bank accounts. Say it's completely different because you never know when one's going to get compromised or you have an issue with one. It is very powerful when you go in someplace and you're like, okay, shut my account down, and you can seamlessly take it to another one. You have leverage that way. And as long as you do that, and most of that stuff, setting that up, it's minutes. You can literally have that stuff set up in minutes.
Okay.
No, and I mean, it's something that Jack Spirko has talked about a lot. Like, well, what if I sell too much and I can't fulfill the orders? It's like, you should be so lucky to have such a problem, because 99% of the people who start a business will not have that problem. Their problem will be, where do I get my next customer?
Yeah, let's say you do this. You've decided that you are going to sell Comfrey Salve. And so you launch your website, you get your Comfrey Salve out there, and you talk to people, and then you sell 1 million units of Comfrey Salve that you have not produced. That means 1 million people bought into your sales pitch, bought it, and are expecting it. And you have two courses of action from here at that point. One, you tell them it's going to be a while for me to fulfill this because I need to do that. Or two, you refund a bunch of money and say, subscribe here to find out when we have more, and you triple the price next time. It's, like that would be a great problem to have. Like, I can't fulfill the orders. Awesome.
So I follow a YouTuber who has a podcast. His name is CGP Grey. He does really cool, long, like highly well-written videos that are short but dense. And he and a business partner set up a merchandise store a few years ago. And again, in their case, like they're not manufacturing anything. They're having to get other people to manufacture it and sell it. And them talking about how much do we buy? Like how much supply do we buy? And they bought literally 3 times as much as they thought they would need because they were doing a big Christmas push on their merchandise. And their goal was like, this will get us through 2024. and more importantly, like we certainly will sell this all in 2024 because we have money sitting in the warehouse otherwise. And what was hilarious is like basically they were talking back and forth apparently about, okay, well, at current projections, we're going to run out in October. 2 days later, okay, at current projections, we're going to run out in July. 2 days later, okay, at current projections, we might make it through May. And basically, they're practically sold out now. Like it's the day before February, and they bought enough supply that they thought it would last a year. And like they're not going to make it through February. And again, like as a business, it kind of sucks, but what a great problem to have that you can't produce enough to sell.
Yeah, Patrick from MT Knives could not source metal beyond the metal he had for his knives. He's very particular about what kind of metal he uses in those neck knives for like a year. And he was like, once these knives are gone, that's it until next year. Like I can make custom knives, I can do these other things, but until I can source more of these sheets, I'm screwed. So,
well, and you had to make that decision in 2020, Nicole, when you went out and bought a whole bunch of beans.
Beans. In fact, I need to buy the beans later today, as a matter of fact, because it's time for more beans. But I was waiting until it was a little less squishy here. I was like, I gotta get the beans over my lawn to the storage units. It's gonna sink. They weigh a lot. Here's one. So PayPal fees are a pain in the butt. I made sure to separate them out. I'm tempted to strictly go check payments going forward. I think, and I hate to say this to somebody I pay, I think if that is causing you pain, that you need to raise your prices. Make sure that's included if you're going to get paid by PayPal, if that's the problem.
If you go strictly, I don't know what you do, but if I went strictly check payments, I would lose 90% of my business.
Yeah.
Yeah. In my payment processing, I let people pay by bank transfer. And I love it when people do because it's like a maximum $5 instead of 3%. And I charge thousands of dollars for my services. So 3% adds up really quickly. But God, I cannot believe how much money I would lose if I mandated people do it out of a bank account. And sometimes it's like, I've got a couple clients who they owe maybe 10 or 15 grand in taxes coming up. They don't have the money to pay me in the bank, but they know I'll save them more than they're going to pay me. So even if they got to put on a credit card, it's actually a smart business decision. Like it's usually not, but if like, okay, I'm going to spend $5,000 on this, which I don't charge that much for most people. The interest is going to cost me $500, but if I'm going to save $10,000 by doing this, it's a no-brainer.
And plus those
shooting straight, make it easier for your customers to give you money. Done.
People always talk about business fees, right? The processing fee. That's just it's a cost of doing business. Whether you save it now or you get it back on the back end, it's a wash, really. Is it not? Am I mistaken on that? Because it's just a cost of doing business. It's just like, yeah, we could ship our product in a bullshit little bag and save a lot of money, or I can buy the boxes and it's just a cost of doing business.
Yep.
Yeah. It's funny. Amanda's post reminded me of when I was young and dumb and a brand new attorney, like licensed not even 3 months. I was like, oh, I'm like a successful person. I should like, and I got a thing in the mail like, oh, subscribe to the digital form of the Wall Street Journal. So it's like, I should do that. Mm-hmm. And I look at their thing and it's like, there's no website. I mean, this is 2010, and like there's no place to go on a website to pay them. I called them up and it's like, hey, where can I put in my payment information? I'm calling to give you money. And it's like, oh, we don't have a website. You just have to do it over the phone. And it's like, you know what? If your guys are that far behind, I don't trust you anymore. I'm not going to buy from you. Yeah. So the most important rule of business to me is when someone puts money in your hand, close your hand.
Like we go out every weekend and we go fine dining. Like that's my biggest cost in my personal life is food. And if you don't have an Instagram page, I don't even come to your restaurant. Like if I can't find you on Instagram, if you're a business and I can't look at Instagram and social media and see interaction with clients, you might be the best dude in the world, like the best company, best restaurant, whatever. But that's the first you can. Amanda will tell you, like, I don't go anywhere where I can't see social media footprint ever. And if I go to a company and they don't have interaction with social media, I don't do business with that company.
It's literally his first question every time. I'm like, hey, do you want to check out this person? What's their YouTube? What's their Instagram? Your links. It's like I should just start giving him links and it would be easier.
Especially because if I have a finite amount of time in a day and we do so much stuff in front of these cameras, and it's about energy, right? If I get on with somebody and I've never had a conversation, I don't know what to talk about with them. Whereas if when you hit me up and like, hey, in 2 weeks, we're going to do a live with this person, I'll literally watch hours of their content and I will know something about them and we will have a much better interaction for the audience if I know something rather than just blindly coming on. There's a lot of them and Nicole will tell you there's a lot of them where I'm like, no, I'm not interested in doing that. I don't know anything. No, I'm not going to blindly come on.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's why I ask you. I have a buddy that pays his taxes on his credit card to get points, pays off the card, and then uses the points to buy plane tickets. That is a game you can play for sure.
Well, there are so many games you can play as well with credit cards, and although some of them end up not working as well as people think they did. I know a lot of people did really well buying the dollar coins from the U.S. Mint and then using the dollar coins to pay off the credit cards. And it was free shipping. It's like some guy spent something like $400,000 in 3 months on his Amex card, buying U.S. dollars and then using the U.S. dollars to pay off the credit card bill. And there's actually a part of the tax code that says if you do something like that, then the points are income and you owe tax on them. But still, like this guy basically walked out making something like 20 grand by doing all this in terms of what the points were worth.
You just have to make sure you're actually paying those things off, right? If you get a Plum card, an American Express Plum card, and you put all of your incoming materials on that thing, it'll pay the salary of 2 or 3 well, I mean, it depends how much you have coming in. But if you have a company and all your incoming materials are paid on those Plum cards, you're on your points back. It's enough to pay salary on multiple employees.
Yeah, the points game is a good one, and it's funny how people don't play it. That's one I've known about for a long time, and I love it.
I'll be honest, like I know there are ways I could take more advantage of like travel points, but to me, it's like I would rather just work on the business and make the money and do it. I'll do better off. Like to me, it can be fun. You can game the system, but it can also almost become like a poverty mindset of like, oh, I need to scratch out every single cent. And it's like, if you're so worried about picking up that penny, you maybe miss the dollar.
Okay, can I ask you a personal question that is about a decision you made, Matthew, or are we not bringing that up?
Well, I guess ask the question and I'll choose whether to answer it or not.
So you decided to make a change for Lent, right?
Yes.
And then this is what he did. Last Thursday, he posted, screw it, I'm not waiting till Lent. What have you decided to do?
So I am going on a diet that is a diet that's worked for me before. It's a primarily carnivore diet. I do use herbs, spices, and I'll eat botanical fruits. So things like peppers and tomatoes basically want to be eaten, as opposed to, things like broccoli that don't want to be eaten. and I have completely given up alcohol as well. And usually I give up alcohol for Lent, but usually during Lent, technically Sundays aren't part of Lent, at least for Catholics. And so you can kind of avoid that. And my child just come into the room. But anyway, so at a minimum until Easter, no, and here is my daughter, no alcohol and no exceptions on the diet, which was fun when I suddenly realized, oh, wait, Valentine's Day is in 2 weeks. I need to find a restaurant to go to. Because we always do that with my wife. We go to a restaurant, then we get a hotel room to be away from my kids and get some alone time. And it's something like, crap, what can I do where I'm not going to be tempted? Because like someone suggested sushi, and yeah, there's lots of stuff at a sushi place I can eat, but I know I'm going to want, a couple rolls with rice in it if I go there. So I can't put myself in that situation.
Yep. So why did you decide to start early?
Because there's no benefit in waiting. Like, why would I wait another 2 weeks to do this when I should do it now? Like, and again, there's some things I think it makes sense to wait for something to do it. But if it's a 100% improvement in your life, don't wait for January 1st. Don't wait for the first of the month. Don't wait till next Monday. Like, because if you say, I'm going to start going to the gym on Monday, you probably won't. If you say, I'm going to the gym right now, you're going to the gym right now.
Those are my morning videos that I make. I make those morning videos every morning saying exactly that same stuff. Amanda orders sushi every weekend and just has them make it without the rice. She gets the same rolls and just has them hold the rice.
Yeah, my wife is not into the whole carnivore thing. So at the point that it's on the table again, it's like, I just don't want to.
Cool.
I don't want to put myself in a position where I don't do what I know I should do.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I think you'll be successful based on the way that went down, is that you did not wait for Lent. And then he came out publicly and was like, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm coming here and I'm saying updates so that I hold myself accountable. And well, you're almost a week in, Matthew.
Yeah.
Congratulations. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Well, he wants to know what you're doing for Meatless Fridays, so. Fish
or fasting.
Yeah. Shellfish is a good one if you need something that will stick. That's what I've found. Just from because for me, it's a satiety issue on the carnivore ketovore diet, that if I have chicken or a real low fat thing like fish, that's a problem. But if I put shellfish in there, it works great.
I've got a really nice catfish recipe that uses a cream sauce. So that ups the fat content to help me stay good.
Yep.
But yeah, honestly, I probably a lot of what I'll do is just fast, because I've been on this diet before, and like there were days I didn't eat because I forgot to eat and I never got hungry. It really is amazing what your body can do when you actually treat it right.
Yep. I've been reading a book called Outlive. Have you read that one yet?
You just mentioned it recently. Yeah. I know. I looked at it. I haven't.
What I've learned is I need to do even more cardio as a result of reading this book. So for longevity reasons, but it's really, I mean, it's a good, for people who are not sure and need sort of that intellectual push. It's a good one where it's like, this is why. This is science behind it. This is how you make the decision about the what that you're building into your life. And I thought it was recommended by Ken Berry, actually on the live stream here with John Willis last August, I think it was. Yeah. Where he said, this is a really good book. And it just, it lines everything out, which is really nice. Okay. We got back to the tax question. What about one LLC as a holding company and a bunch of smaller operations?
So again, that's what I've had multiple clients do. It may not make sense to set up 3 or 4 or 5 LLCs. I mean, there's fees in every state. Some of them it's low. I didn't know this, but Arizona, it's like $25 to file an LLC and no annual fees. So that's great. But I mean, in some states, California, it's a minimum $800 a year to maintain it. So like, it doesn't make sense to have 3 or 4 LLCs. You can absolutely have one LLC own multiple companies, do a DBA for the sub companies if you want to. but it can make a whole lot of sense. And again, it's no different than what GE does, right? How many companies does GE have in GE? You know, they're military contractors, but they sell electronics, and there's nothing that says you can't have multiple areas of business in one business.
It comes down to whether you're actually doing business or pretending and playing business. Like the coolest thing in the world is when your accountant comes to you and goes, "Hey, you need to buy some stuff." Like that's a great feeling. Like you've made money, and you're going to pay 40% on this money, or you're going to spend this money.
I happen to know somebody who got a Corvette that way. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Somebody who might have been in the comments at one point during this live radio meeting.
Benchmark. I mean, they got in that position. They were making, just doing business on a large level. I was with Strider when that first happened. We shared a building, and both of them, their accountant said, "You need to buy some vehicles." And they both bought big, huge Dodge Ram trucks, both of them that year. Because they're going to pay on it. You hear Wes Watson talk about it all the time. He's like, "I don't fly the little jet. I fly the big jet, and all these cars and all these luxury goods. It's advertising for the company. I'm going to pay 40% to the IRS, or I'm going to fly these flights, which are a cost of business." And it's awesome when you get to the point where you can do stuff like that. If you just started some company and you want to go buy a Corvette, your accountant's going to, laugh his ass off at you. It doesn't fit into the business. But when you get to that point and you gain, and when you go to hire the accountant too, do you want to sleep really well at night, or do you want to have more money? Like those are conversations that actually get had.
Well, for that last question, to me, it's a bit of both. Like, my usual advice is like maybe leave 5 to 10% of the table and sleep twice as well.
Yeah,
that's my personal thing. I've got one client who's way more aggressive I am, and like 90% of what I'm doing is like, no, back up a little bit, back up just a little bit. But if he's willing to take that risk of getting an audit, it's not my decision to tell my clients what to do. When I work with someone, my goal is to educate, to teach, to inform, to let them know what's possible, and to give them advice. But I mean, and it's no different as a personal injury attorney than a tax attorney. I don't get to tell my clients settle the case or don't settle the case. I say, I think you should settle the case for the following reasons. Here are the risks if we don't. But ultimately, as an attorney, as a counselor, that's not my job. My job is to give you all you can possibly make for yourself. And then guess what? You get to live with that decision. I mean, you can blame your attorney, but if your attorney did a good job, it's not your attorney's fault unless, they screwed up the advice.
I tell people all the time when they're talking, because we have a lot of business conversations every night on the live. And I tell people, I go, look, when you're setting up your bank account, set another account, and you can title it IRS or theft or whatever you want to title it. But every dollar that comes in, 33 cents goes into that theft account, and you're always covered. You're going to get to keep some of it at the end, but whatever that is on the back end, you're going to have the money to pay that thing, and you're going to be fine. And then as you get bigger, that can change around. But if you do that, you will always be safe. 33 cents of every dollar goes into that account.
And if you can't do that, you need to be charging more for what you're doing. Because I know, because I didn't do it this way, I started out undercharging for hollow roast originally. And I ended up in two situations that were hard to manage. One, keeping the expenses coming through one account because there was a cash flow issue. And the cash flow issue was that I was not selling my coffee at the right price. And then the second issue was and then being able to put some aside to pay the taxes was problematic. So I had to learn, actually Jack just told me to raise my prices, and I decided since he was more successful than me, I'd just do what he said. And it worked. I started selling more coffee the very next week with a higher price. And then I was able to have that flexibility to have enough buffer to keep the things disciplined and different, which then makes tax attorneys really happy when they look at your accounts.
A lot of people starting. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, it definitely, especially, it's really rough. I've already had a conversation with one client that it's like, yeah, you're going to owe, like you did no withholding this year, and you should have, but you didn't. you're going to owe like $35,000 to the IRS this year between your self-employment taxes and your payroll taxes and your income taxes. And I'm looking at your bookkeeping, and you don't have $35,000 in the bank. So I would really advise you start to do a lot of business if you can in the next 3 months to raise that money, because that's a problem. Now, I mean, ultimately, the IRS, I hate to admit this, but they're actually very reasonable if you file your return and then you basically tell them, I know I owe X dollars, but I don't have X dollars. Can we set up a payment plan? Like, I've never heard of them having any problem with that. Now, you don't file the return, they got to chase you down. They're not as nice about it. And there's additional fees and expenses sometimes when that happens. But it's like, again, it's like you dug yourself a hole. Don't dig yourself deeper.
Yeah, I had to do that once. Like, that's why I learned that lesson. Years ago when I was working as a 1099, probably in a situation where I should not have been a 1099, but that's what we did in the 90s and the early 2000s. I ended up owing a bunch of money, and I had to have that call. Like, I don't have it, but I can make payments. And all I had to do was endure a lecture about cash management. And then they were like, if you miss even one of these, you're in trouble. So choose something you can manage. So I chose low and got it done. It was not fun, but it was better than having somebody come out. Well, I didn't have any assets to take either, but seize my accounts or whatever they could do. There wasn't a lot there for them to take. I think I still had student loans back then. So yeah, start a farm if you have an excess income problem.
I heard the other day, most farmers work 1, if not 2 full-time jobs in order to be able to be a farmer.
That's terrible.
That, like, you have multiple adult incomes coming in to sustain that. It absolutely is terrible.
Well, before I got involved with you guys and Jack and this whole community, like that barely even seemed crazy to me. It's like, well, of course, it's a farm. It's hard to make money at it. And it's like, I see people doing things better. You know, I see people like Joel Salatin who make a lot of money running a farm. And it's like, it's doable. It's just not doable if you do it the same way everyone else does it.
I'd be curious.
That says, I've got multiple clients who are farmers, and those are actually some of the hardest tax things to set up, because if you keep losing money on the farm, the IRS tends to say it's not a business, and you can be in a terrible situation where, like, oh crap, I sold $10,000 worth of stuff and I owe income on the $10,000, and I can't expense any of the costs of this. So even though I lost 10 grand, I owe taxes on making 10 grand. That's not a fun situation to be in either.
I'd be curious what the revenue breakdown looks like with Joel. How much of it's actually agritourism, how much of it's books, how much of it's speaking engagement versus actual product produced on the farm and revenue from that. And I think you would see that it's actually probably, I would guess, less than 10% of the incoming revenue is from a product that is actually produced on the farm. And you almost have to do that now. I mean, it's a mess when you look at big farming, and they are making it more and more difficult. And there really seems to be an attack on anybody wanting to do small scale agriculture. You almost have to do content and agribusiness tourism to be able to support that lifestyle. It seems you can definitely support it a lot faster that way.
Yeah, no, and again, I think that's the natural evolution of any successful business, is figure out something that works, make money doing that, either improve that or add something else, repeat.
Yep. Multiple streams. Yeah.
I bet he would share that openly too, John, if we asked him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we did. We talked about it a little bit. Yeah, for sure. Gold Shaw has a couple videos up in the last few months where a lady came on and really took issue with him, like just lit into him about how he's not a true farmer and he's making money from all these other things. And it got to the point in the comments, he had to turn the comments off because people were, like, of course he is. Why would you not? Like, why are you not? You're taking issue. And something that I was thinking about yesterday, she's like, when I see fencing like that, all I know is you got money, honey. Well, why don't you do some videos or something, or be personable on video, and maybe you would have some revenue coming into that too. And then, then using, like we talk about all the time, affiliate codes and Amazon codes, and $2,000, like Spearco's fish guy thing, man, that I talk about that all the time. He had the guy that had the fish store, and that guy came on and did an incredible interview. And we immediately implemented, like that night, we started putting in things that literally just a toggle of a button, and you can start getting Amazon revenue and affiliate revenue. And it all adds up, man. It adds up quickly. But you all have to have an audience to do any of it. It starts with the audience.
Well, and that's why worrying about monetization in your first 3 weeks of being a content creator is not where your focus should be.
I agree with you. However, let's say they're not sure what direction we're going, right? I'm like, identify what you love, and then let's figure out how to monetize that. And I say you could be a weirdo that eats staples. And if you just make videos about eating staples, you're going to be amazed that other weirdos that eat staples show up to follow your content. And in addition to that, if you just picked some item from Amazon, GoPro batteries, I really like these. They're 30% longer. Here's a link to them. It doesn't matter what that customer buys, that he buys this or not. You just need to put up content so that every one of your customers clicks that link, because it downloads a cookie. Anything they buy in the next 24 hours, you get between 1% and 2% of it, is what I'd say. But the truth is, you get 7 and 15% on some items. So if you have an audience base of 10,000 people, I only need 10% of those to click that link, because everybody uses Amazon, and it adds up. It adds up quickly. Like I pay more money every week than I make from YouTube, but the money comes from, anytime somebody buys an EMP shield, or anytime somebody buys, any of the products that we do business with. And those are all products that we didn't go out and seek those. Those were products that we actually truly used. So it makes it a little bit easier for us. But I think you really could. If somebody's like, man, I need to make some money, I think I could really sit down with somebody 30 minutes a day, and we could have them making some actual money, more than they've ever made anywhere else. I think within 90 days, we could do it.
That would make a really good content series too.
It would.
It would also require 30 minutes a week of John's time.
John's got plenty of time, right?
I give away 2 hours of it every night on live feed. All you got to do is listen to it.
Yeah. Heck, he gives us 2 hours here. Yeah, well, I guess, I know you agree with me, but you shouldn't ignore the revenue streams you can tap into. I agree with that. And I'm a little butthurt that Amazon kicked me off their system. But
why?
It was never clear why. I think it goes back to, I did a podcast about a garlic peeler that I really like. It's like, well, it doesn't matter what it is. And my mom heard that podcast and she bought it, and they identified that she was a close relationship, and she used my link. And it was right before Christmas, and they booted me, and I appealed it, and they were like, nope, you're booted. That's not okay. And I'm like, well, I can't tell my mom not to listen to my podcast.
There's got to be a way to get you back on. You should reapply.
I should reapply, because it's been like 5 years since that happened.
Reapply. Yeah.
But they also have the new content creator thing too. Now the influencer program is new. Have you checked
but you
that
have to use. You have to use. I think you have to use the things that they throw at you. I don't think you get to just choose. I could be wrong. No, I haven't looked at it deep enough. No.
Yeah, I'm doing an interview with a guy who has been doing it, Brian from the Lots Project. He's been doing it, I think, for about a month now. And he's going to come on, say like what his thoughts are about that tomorrow.
Perfect. I know.
I'm looking forward to that episode.
When TikTok started doing that, we had a whole list of people that they would throw things at us. They're like, we'll give you $1,000 for an ad read on this. We'll give you $5 for this. We'll give you $100 for this. It was nothing that resonated. Like everybody would have known it was bullshit if I did any of those.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, here's my pet rock.
Mm-hmm.
I painted the face on my pet rock.
Yeah. It's the most beautiful pet rock.
The hilarious thing, John, with your audience, if you want to like totally trash something, your audience might actually just buy it because it was funny.
Maybe.
I mean, I remember like the Daily Show used to be supported by Arby's, and like they made fun of Arby's all the time, how terrible the food was and how it was never good. But like Arby's could actually point to somewhere where like their revenue went up every time they had an ad show up on the Daily Show, even though literally every single mention was like, it's terrible, no one eats this, it'll ruin your stomach. It worked.
Yeah. It's just hearing it in your mind over and over, right? It's just like targeted marketing. I'll see something and I'll see something and I'll see something. Finally, I buy it. They get me eventually with it. It's very rare that I buy something the first time I see it. I'll go look at it, but it's the 10th, 11th, 12th, 20th time when I actually click all the way through.
Yeah, it pisses me off when I buy it and I still see the ads though.
Right.
I feel that way. Like Amazon should be better at that, because I'm a book reader and I'll download a book and then they'll keep like advertising the book at me for years after that. I'm like, I literally have already read that book. I own that book. You know, I own that book because it's in the stupid history that I own that book, and they just keep going with it. There must be something where people keep buying the same thing. That must be why, because I can't believe that their system is not sophisticated enough to figure that out.
I think some of that works because like a lot of those things, maybe they're part of a series or whatever. And like if you've already read one thing in the series, it may say, oh, hey, I should check that series out, see if there's a new book or something. Because yeah, I have a Kindle, and so there's like an ad on it on the lock screen anytime I turn it off, and it's always a book ad. And literally like half the time, yeah, it's like I own this on Kindle and I bought it from you, so you know I own it. Why are you advertising this? But I also think Amazon probably has some of the best big data in the world. So if they're doing something, it makes sense.
Maybe they think somebody else will see your Kindle screen.
Maybe.
Yeah,
we've had hundreds of new people show up on social media on the lives at night, and a lot of it seems to be children, and a lot of it seems to be from places like India, and then you've got a bunch of like just fart jokes and stuff, just like kids. And they're like, man, we need to ban all these guys. I'm like, don't ban them. I go, what we're not understanding. What I need you to understand is whether that guy has a real account or not, his phone knows what phone he's using. And everybody he interacts with now sees our social media. I don't need all of them. I only need 1% of them. I only need 1% to click through and actually become a client or be somebody who interacts with us on a real basis and subscribe to something. It does, even free, because when that guy subscribes, it exposes his entire social media footprint to my content, and it works. Like Rogan said a long time ago, I heard him say, like, don't even go into your comments because you're going to want to ban people. Don't ban people. And we used to ban people left and right when they'd say something negative in the beginning. And that, I think that's why we've sat at 700,000 on Facebook rather than 2 million, because of the people that we banned in the early days, I think. And now we don't ban anybody hardly.
Yeah, you got to be pushing a porn site or something to get banned off my channel. I told John before this that I've 4x'd, which was a surprise, 4x like engagement, downloads, and new subscribers or likes or whatever across the platforms approximately. And I've been trying to figure out if it's just a January thing or if it's because the changes we made last fall are starting to work. The other thing that has increased are jerk comments in my comment field. You know, like more people just saying crappy stuff. And you always go to their accounts and they have no followers or 0 videos posted. And I just leave them up.
That's the easiest way to know that you're succeeding, though, because you're getting new reach. Because the new dipshits are showing up. Just let them go. Just let them, because every time they do it, whether it's their fake account or not, that phone knows everybody they communicate with. It's just like we were having lunch and we were talking about the Titanic conspiracy theories. And when I walked out to my computer, on the side of Facebook was an ad for the Titanic in Gatlinburg. I'm like, what is this? And we actually went to it. But everybody that I said something to said, hey, I had Titanic on my phone that night too. Every one of them.
Well, how many times are you even just thinking about getting something and like, I need the blinds for this window over here. I'm going to get targeted with blinds ads for the next 3 weeks now. Because
I say all the time, I think it's way beyond this. I think that I truly believe that there's, and people think I'm crazy when I say it, some Alex Jones shit. I think there's something in there already that you've ingested or took willingly or whatever happened to you. I'll be standing in the shower, not vocalizing anything. The phone's not even in the room with me. And I'll get out and the conversation I was having in my head will be in this phone 30 minutes later. And people are like, well, that's just the productive programming. And it just knows, what you're thinking because that's how your life is. And the programs are that great. Maybe not.
But it is. I mean, Target made the news in kind of a bad way for this, maybe 7 or 8 years ago.
Girl.
The pregnant girl who didn't know she was even pregnant.
Yeah.
But Target knew.
Dad knew.
Well, Dad didn't know at first either.
No, but Dad got all those all those coupons for pregnancy mailed to his house.
Yeah. And then again, it's amazing how literally these companies can know us better than we know ourselves.
Well, just think about every year something more and more crazy busted out that they admit to. So just what they're admitting to, just imagine how far beyond that is, how much more crazier it actually is.
And it'll get crazier yet.
Yeah.
It will get crazier yet.
I mean, every night people are like, well, what about this? What about that? I'm like, yeah, the border's terrible. Yeah, Iran's terrible. Yeah, Israel thinks terrible. Why do you know it? Only because of this. Only because of this do you know it.
Yep. I'm too old for this to have happened to me in high school.
I am younger than you are, but I'm still too old to have had this happen to me in high school. I didn't have a cell phone until I was in college.
Yeah.
And most everyone else had a cell phone before I even got one in college. So
I remember guys going, I'm not getting one of those cell phone things. I'm not doing that. I remind myself every time I say I'm being that guy with new technology and stuff. So you're a comic book guy. Do you go to Comic-Con?
I went to Gen Con for 7 years in a row.
What is
Gen
that?
Con is it's comics and games.
Okay.
So RPGs, card games, I used to love them all. I don't have time to play them for the most part anymore. But I still love them. And partly, again, it's that solving the puzzle, right? The games are, to me, all puzzles. What are the rules? How do they interact? What's the best strategy? So that's just kind of how my mind works.
Yeah, the minute you said that you love games or that you love puzzles earlier, all I'm thinking is the first thing we talked about were the gaming books behind your head. And I'm like, this is how you take something you love and monetize it. And they seem unrelated, like figuring out the best way for somebody to structure their business, talk to them about what tax write-offs they can take and how to track that and how to get set up so that you keep more of your money in your pocket. That's a puzzle. That's a game. You're literally playing a game for fun, for money in a useful way. I think it's awesome.
Do you think you'll ever do a graphic novel?
Probably not. I don't know. Maybe that's just bad self-talk. I do actually have some physical issues that make it really hard to do drawing. I have a hand tremor. I'm sure there are probably some computer things I could do though. But no, honestly, most of the storytelling I do as a DM playing D&D. That's my storytelling. That's some of my therapy. I remember 2020 happened and I was not getting around anybody and we were I was less locked down than a lot of people were, but we were just everyone was locked down. And literally almost for my sanity, it was I'm going to start an online game because I need something creative in my life and I'm not getting it. And that game went for nearly 2 years. It was fantastic.
And that was Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah.
Online.
Well,
okay.
Technically something called Pathfinder, but close enough.
Does TSR still put that out? Or are those still TSR?
Oh God, TSR's been gone for 20 years. They got bought by Wizards of the Coast, and then Wizards of the Coast got bought by Hasbro, and Hasbro called the Pinkertons on somebody last year.
Really?
I didn't even know the Pinkertons were still around.
The Pinkertons are still around either.
No, like so basically, like a product got released like 3 weeks early at one store or something, and some guy put it up on social media, and like literally the Pinkertons showed up saying it's illegal for you to own that. You need to give that to us.
Showed up with Browning automatic rifles.
I mean, again, it was not nearly that threatening, but like, I mean,
Right.
Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro caught a lot of flack for that.
Yeah, we knew a guy that worked for TSR, who was one of our dealers for a long time. He was actually, I think he was vice president at TSR, and then he started a machine gun company. Has been wildly successful with that. But it's I used to play D&D. I think when I was 13, 14, 15, 16. I remember, the expert level and the advanced level and the Dungeon Master's Guide, and I had stacks of all that stuff years and years ago.
It basically, it's those two bookshelves behind me, two Billy bookcases from IKEA, and one of them is full of comic books and one of them is full of gaming stuff.
We had a whole thing about why I remember, like, in Congress, Dungeons and Dragons was causing kids to do mass shootings, and it was satanic, and right, I think it was before Dee Schneider with Tipper Gore and all that nonsense. I think before they were attacking heavy metal, it was Dungeons and Dragons that they were after.
It's funny because Xavier Hawk almost talked Unloose the Goose into doing Dungeons and Dragons on an episode once. He was like,
that would have been great.
Unloose the Goose, Dungeons and Dragons.
There is a whole series of various podcasts. They're called actual play podcasts, and some of them are like video as well, but a lot of them are just audio. And they can be, 2, 3, 4, 5 hour podcasts, and their numbers are fantastic. People are always looking for more. Again, Critical Role is huge, but there's literally hundreds of podcasts, but people gaming, people listening to people RP, playing Pathfinder, D&D, whatever. And again, I know one of these guys who was in part of one of these groups, and like they turned it from a passion of love into a business that the six of them together are going to make $500,000 this year in 5 years. And they weren't even trying to start a business, but it's like they started getting calls from people like, will you promote our product on your podcast? Will you? They've now got their own gaming books they're putting out that they're selling and making a lot of money on.
That's cool. Somebody in here said, look how far the right has gone left. I would counter you and say, look how much of the left has come right also. How many people have left the crazy cities? How many people have put their hands into the ground? And how many people have started businesses? If you want to convert Democrats to Republicans, and I'm not either, really, all you need to do is have them start businesses. Have them start having to pay taxes, and they automatically move the other direction. Did you hear Trump said that when he didn't say if, he said, when I am president again, there will be no more payroll taxes. Did you hear him say that?
I didn't hear that. I mean, that'd be great. Be a huge tax decrease for a lot of people. And I remember when Ron Paul was running for president in 2012, and they talk about, do you know how far back you have to go? If we got rid of the income tax entirely, how far back we would go and have the same budget? And it was like 11 years. It was 11 years ago that hellish of a time?
Yeah, no kidding.
I mean, conspiracy hat on, I am totally a believer that taxes exist as like 95% as a means of control and not as a means of the government raising money.
Yes.
And like that's the hardest part of my job, because I am very much in that. Like, I am telling people, like, if you change your actions, you can take advantage of this or that tax break. And like there are times that I'm like, is this the right thing to do? Like, am I helping the bad guys? But all I can say is that, well, but people with more money also have more freedom. So
I hear it all the time. They're spending our money. They're sending our tax money to Ukraine. No, they're not. They're just creating new money. They're taxing you to keep you suppressed so that you're under the finger, right? The IRS could easily just be like, you owe this much money, right? They put that bullshit out there so that you can pay the wrong amount so that they can give you fees. You hear all the time, if there was just a 10% tax every time you spent money, right? A 10% sales tax, basically a flat tax. The IRS would generate more money than they generate right now just off of 10%. But then you also hear the argument, well, what would we do with all these people, all the accountants, all the tax lawyers, all of the IRS agents? But it's all to keep you concerned, right? When you're operating out of fear, you cannot operate at your peak 100% ability. And I think that's what a lot of that is. But that whole they're spending our tax money, that's just to divide you guys. They're not taking that money from you and sending it anywhere. They're just creating a bunch of new money and sending it over there. That's not your money.
Well,
your money
if we lived in a more perfect world where they got rid of taxes and I had to shut my business down, okay, fine. I'll start a new business. And guess what? I've learned more about running a business in the past 4 years. I already have my email list. Some of those people won't follow me to the new thing, but some of them will. But again, more importantly, I have the skills. Like I was one of those guys 5 years ago, must be nice. Yeah. You say, do this, do that. But you got lucky or whatever. But like, I honestly, God believe like some of these people out there, again, some people did get lucky, but a lot of people, like if you took everything from them, absolutely everything, and said, here's $100, they would build everything back within a couple years. I mean, you basically did that, John, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's again, you could have gotten unlucky and maybe you didn't succeed or whatever, but I think the overall merit matters in our society most of the time. And the people who know what to do, they're going to succeed. And the people who refuse to learn what to do, they're going to fail.
I don't think there is any unlucky. I don't think there's luck or unluck. It's just persistence, right? How bad do you want it? When you fall, how fast do you get back up? And how much are you willing to not sleep? How much are you willing to fall asleep at the sewing machine or whatever it is you're doing? It's just how bad do you want it?
Yep. It's fun because I've seen Matthew go through that mind shift over the years. Like when you were first, like you went through this phase where you were mindset change curious, I would like to say. And you asked a lot of questions because you're a very analytical dude. And you're like, but okay, how do I do this? I think because you asked those questions, you lined out your first year really well. And then you had some success and tapped into it. And then you had other not success. And actually, next Monday's episode is motivated by something you asked me once. So,
okay,
about motivation. So,
yeah. No, I mean, more and more, I really do think a lot of this really is mindset and just, I mean, what's that old line? Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're probably right.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah. Why don't you do I see people in the comments saying you should do a gaming podcast. How come you have not done that?
I have actually started another podcast and I've got maybe 8 episodes of it up, which is my second run at a podcast. I'm not enjoying the talking to myself, so I think I need to go to maybe a different format of some sort.
Yep.
And really, the thing is, right now, I'm just focusing more on this and my business. I mean, again, as I said before, I still got a day job. That's a full-time job. I've got my side business. I've got 3 kids. I've got a wife. And I really want to get this more up and running before I start the next thing.
Do you want me to just start a gaming podcast and get it going, and then I'll just give it to you? Because you kind of light up when I ask you about it. And there's not law books behind you. There's gaming books behind you.
So it is actually funny. Like one of my favorite YouTube channels is a YouTube channel called The Rules Lawyer, and it's an actual lawyer talking about this sort of stuff. And I found it because I was thinking about starting a YouTube channel myself, and I was like, that's got to be taken. That'd be a great name for my podcast or YouTube. There will be something like that in my life. I know there will be something like that in my life. right now, I have seen too many people screw up businesses by shiny object syndrome, and I'm that same guy. Like I was the guy who, okay, I'm going to start doing this. 3 months later, oh, I'm going to do that. 3 months later, oh, I'm going to do that. And so really, I do want to just, again, focus on what I'm currently doing. And really my goal is to have my business where I don't need the day job anymore by the end of the year. I'll probably keep it. I actually love my day job. I love the guys I work for. I love the company. I think they're great. But that's my goal for this year, is to be to the point where every bit of money I make from my day job is just going into investments and I can live off of my business. So
Survivalizer says if you do it once a week, he'll be your co-host.
I don't actually know who that is.
I do.
I don't even...
I can. I don't know if you met him or not, but he's been to SRF. But he was one of the people I did on the Roundtable podcast a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know at this point all but one of those people. So
yeah. So anyway, John's right. You do light up. It's kind of like on me about that pool from time to time, the endless pool, because I light up when I talk about that. So, and I actually just figured out something for that. So,
I think every nerd who loves gaming, like their dream is to do some sort of a gaming thing and make money that way. And the absolutely insane thing is, whereas that was nearly impossible 30 years ago, it's absolutely doable today. Like the number of people, some of these Kickstarters are pulling in $2 or $3 million for games, for books. There's a guy named Matt Colville who started off as a YouTuber, just giving advice on D&D stuff. Eventually started putting out some books on their own, and like the very first one they did, $600,000 Kickstarter. Had never put out a product before, and they raised $600,000. And they put like $100,000 of that into their own pocket. Like they actually made money doing it. Well, they just put out a Kickstarter to start their own game, a completely new rule set. They put it out in like November of last year, saying the game will be released in 2025, in June of 2025, so a year and a half away. And they raised like $4 million. And again, some of it's their network. Like they built this huge thing on YouTube and doing all these things. But like that's an option was not available 30 years ago, because there were licensing things and all this sort of stuff. And I mean, the internet wasn't there to bring people together. So again, I'm sure I'll do that at some point. Who knows? I'm sure Nicole will bug me about it when I see her in April.
Yep. I don't know if I will actually, but it is something to pay attention to. And John's really good at seeing when people light up, and then he'll ask you a question. You'll go like, huh. The I can't in me was strong about that topic. So that's why I wasn't doing that.
I'm not going to lie. I went to SFR 2 years ago, and I mostly avoided John because I didn't want to get him to give me any ideas, because I was scared of what the ideas were going to be.
So he was at Self-Awareness Festival and apparently didn't meet you somehow.
I mean, I shook his hand, but like I didn't talk with him. And again, that was, in hindsight, that was stupid. But again, that was a limiting mindset. Like, what if he challenges me? What am I going to do? Man up.
People ask all the time how you find your passion, right? How do I find that thing that I love to do? Because that's what I tell them. I go, let's find the thing you love to do, and then figure out how to make money on that. And I tell them all the time, like your beginning journey is at 12 o'clock on the clock, and you can go a year or 2 years, right? But then it clicks 1 second, and a mile down the road, it still looks like it's the same path, but 5 miles down the road, you don't even see. You can start off on this thing, and it can just deviate slightly, or it can deviate greatly. And that one thing that you were struggling to try to make $100,000 a year with, when that clock clicks 1 second, it's just that deviation where all of a sudden you're making millions of dollars. And it can be in a complete different genre, or it can be close. And I started telling guys this 20 years ago. They're like, I want to be an SOE store. And I said, there's no future in being an SOE store. You can be an SOE dealer, but you still have to sell flashlights and goggles. You need to be an Oakley dealer. You need to be a Surefire dealer. And yeah, you can make, a couple $100,000 selling SOE stuff, but that's not really business. Like, you need to make a couple of $100,000 from all of these things. And nowadays it is so simple nowadays, because you don't have to have a brick and mortar, and you don't have to have liability insurance for your customers, and you don't have to have parking for your customers. And as long as this thing exists, the internet, and I know we all keep waiting for it to fail, but I'm 52 years old and I've not seen a day where the power has actually gone off for real. And that's why I maintain this farm. It's just a hobby, because if the power goes off tomorrow, every dude that works for me here is a farmer, and I maintain all of these animals in case that happens, but it is yet to happen. So we just keep developing and building, people and people that we can do business with. So whatever that is, you have to identify it for, not you, but I mean, anybody listening, you have to figure out what that is. And it can be a perfect, great thing right now. And just that click is where it happens.
And it's okay that you don't start with the perfect thing.
Absolutely. You have to. I had to make all these mistakes here to get to where it is, right? You can't come on a property and just cut down all the well, you can. I mean, if you have more money, you can bring in big equipment, but you have to do all the little shit that makes no sense today to have gotten to today.
Oh, I know I've absolutely cost myself tens of thousands of dollars in revenue by mistakes I've made in my business. I don't care, because you're going to make mistakes no matter what. Like, again, this is when people ask me for advice, and I'm always kind of weirded out by it, because it's like, I'm not that successful yet. Like, I'm successful, but like, I'm not, Jack Spirko or, John Willis successful. But it's like, just do something. Do anything. Just try it out and see what happens. It's like, I think this is something that I think it's like, it's so pushed back on our society today. It's like, oh, you failed. Oh, you're bad. And it's like, no, failure is not bad. Failure is just the next step to succeeding.
Yeah, I fail all the time.
You're not going to write any kind of book.
What did you say?
You're not going to write any kind of book without some failures. Nobody wants to go watch the superhero movie unless some terrible shit happened to him and he overcame it and became the superhero. If you just start out and the whole movie's all just, you're this awesome superhero, they can't relate to it. They don't have any hope from it. You have to make all those mistakes. You have to make those in order to tell the story in the future. Nobody's going to want to just jump in and go, yeah, Jeff Bezos started Amazon and he's this multi-billionaire and he has spaceships. You have to hear about him cataloging all those books in the garage. You have to hear about all the computers that didn't work for Apple. You have to have all that shit, or none of the success makes any difference to anybody.
It's funny. I just had a discussion with some of my friends talking about why Spider-Man's basically the most popular superhero of all time. And it's because he's the most normal of all time. Like, he's got a girlfriend or a wife. He's got other family. He's got money problems. Like, how many superheroes have money problems? But he does. He's constantly worried about making the mortgage. And again, it's like we relate with him because he's the most human of almost any major superhero out there, because he's got the same problems we do.
But we all know that Batman is truly the biggest, the best superhero. He's the most. It's the most. Are we going to go get by? Am I getting bit by a spider? Or I could just come into a bunch of money and technology and be able to be a superhero. I mean, which one's really going to happen for me in the next year? Probably not the spider.
Well, both of them are orphans, so that's kind of a wash.
Yeah. My buddy
spider right now in my living room, actually.
My buddy said, my friend says, I haven't done anything amazing in life because I haven't had any trauma happen. I said, do not even speak that into existence, because some trauma will come your way.
Yes, it will.
Batman's not a superhero. You know a guy named Matt Woodworth? Does that name mean anything to you? Woodworth Gaming?
No, I saw that post. I mean, it's a long story. There's a lot of people who have done something in gaming, in that space, that creative space, and done very well for themselves. I mean, there are. It's funny, like, the people who created D&D never made that much money off of it. I mean, they finally had to sell it because their company was bankrupt, because they actually weren't that good of business people. They made a great thing, but they sucked at business. But the number of millionaires who have become millionaires because of gaming, probably just in the last 5 years. I mean, it's not 10, it's not 100. Like, there's got to be hundreds, if not thousands of people who have done that, again, just in the last 5 years, because just like you say, you don't need everyone to buy from you. But if you've got people following you, and if you can get 1% of them to buy from you, that can be a lot of money. Especially when you provide value for that money, like when you do put out a good product. But I think it's also true, so much of what we buy isn't because we want the thing, it's because you know the person selling it.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I'm a huge fan of Tom Woods. I have bought so much stuff from him because it's him. Like, it was stuff I didn't even need, but it's like, you know what? I like Tom. I'll give him some money.
Who is Tom Woods? I don't know who that is.
He's a big podcaster. He actually was an academic who basically, and as libertarians, like, I can't do this anymore. So he started a podcast. He now does a lot of business coaching for people. So he's like, of the libertarian podcasts, he's probably one of the 3 or 4 biggest and one of the oldest as well. Like, he's got almost 3,000 episodes at this point.
Cool.
Yeah, his podcast is great. Okay, well, we're rounding the corner, guys. It's time to go once around the horn. Let's do it. We'll start with you, Matthew.
So again, the best way to reach out to me is to go to agoristtaxadvice.com/LFTN. That's AGORIST for Agorist. That will give you a place to sign up for my email newsletter, which I try to do about once a week with really useful information. And it will also give you a download of just think about these things as business deductions, just to get kind of your mind flowing as to what the possibilities are.
John, what you got for us today?
SOEtacticalgear.com. We release a different t-shirt every week. We never rerun them. They come out every Monday. I do a live every night at 9 o'clock on YouTube. We can have a conversation about anything you want. If you want to hear more of my beautiful voice, I have 5,000 videos here on YouTube. So jump on. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, MeWe, TikTok, Locals Float, everywhere. So I'm most active on Instagram. And generally when somebody replies to you, especially if it's mean, that's usually me replying to you.
Although I understand that Amanda's even more direct than you are.
Oh, she'll just, if there was a button that could electrocute you, you guys are lucky that there's not.
I just found it funny you mentioned float, which I haven't even thought about in the past year.
Well, I'm Nicole Sauce from the Living Free in Tennessee podcast, and just want to remind you, Self-Reliance Festival is coming up April 6th and 7th. We've got a great lineup of speakers. The demos are coming in. Grab your tickets. They're at early bird pricing right now. It includes camping and parking. That's over at selfreliancefestival.com. And if you want to follow me, go to NicoleSauce.com. That will take you everywhere that I am doing something.
Awesome.
See you later, guys.